Hi, everyone. Thanks for staying. Get closer. We don't bite. This will be fun. Okay, so we're going to get started soon. This panel is called Borderless Innovators, and I'm excited to introduce to you some of the panelists today. My name's Elizabeth Irizarry. I'm with Mission Impact, and I'm going to invite on the stage Sue Rooney. Welcome. Thank you. Dr. Loretta Chen and Gabrielle Pelicci. Welcome. And we'll get you mics in just a second, so we can just relax. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Awesome. Great. Hi, everyone. Don't leave. This is going to be a great panel. You're going to enjoy it. How often do you see a panel full of ladies? You can't leave.
And a mouse. For full disclosure, I drove 5 hours from Orlando Disneyland because my co-founder really wanted to be in Disneyland. And I was like, we have to do it. And women says we got to do it. We got to do it. I drove him to Disneyland, and then I still made it here. So, yeah,
yay!
That's what we do.
You can make it here. Woo! We're here. We're going to lift things up. We're a high energy group, so I'm really excited for you to experience this conversation. So today we're talking about borderless innovators, and what does that mean? So we're really defining the future of Web3 by creating a knowledge economy and an equitable, more inclusive global ecosystem of innovators and creators. So I'm so excited to just walk through first and just do some introductions so you can get to know what these incredible women are working on. So Gabby, why don't you kick us off and tell us your name and who you are and what you're doing? Why Web3?
Hi, I'm Dr. Gabrielle Pelicci, and I've been playing in the Web3 space for about a year. Luckily, I connected with Elizabeth, who is like the mayor of Web3 in Miami, if you didn't know. And she gathers amazing people and creates amazing projects. So luckily, through Elizabeth, I was connected to Mission Impact, which is a global leadership training for women. So I was a program mentor in the first cohort for Mission Impact. And then I'm featured in the Women of the Future book, which is a phenomenal project that Sue Rooney has been leading for us for the last several months, 6 months, 9 months, something like that. So I just feel very, very grateful to be connected to these powerful and beautiful women.
Likewise. Thank you. So Loretta, please.
Hi, everybody. As you all know, I'm the only mouse here. A little rodent. Hi, everybody. So, Dr. Loretta Chen, born and raised in Singapore and then studied in London, California, lived in the Himalayas, around the world, and now living the metaverse. And right here in Miami with all of you. Thank you all for having us. So my journey in the metaverse really started with my co-founder. So let's take it up and take it back a little bit. So I am a professor, also a creator, and always involved in what is now called traditional media. So publishing, television, radio, that was my thing. But over the pandemic, my co-founder contacted me. By this time, I was living in Hawaii, thinking that I'm, by this time, retired. I thought, I'm going to kick it back a notch. I'm in Hawaii with my 22 cats, and I'm a mouse. And so I thought, that's it. My life is good. But when my co-founder told me about this, back then, Nothing Burger, now the world's biggest metaverse called The Sandbox, we saw incredible opportunity in being able to do a couple of things. One, to be able to create borderless worlds where we're able to bring everyone into space, to recreate a creator economy where we sort of tear down the walls of traditional sort of gatekeepers and really allow creators to create a creator economy, which is very dear to my heart. Like I said, I've been very blessed to have been able to play in a creator economy and make a living out of it, but I know that many artists aren't able to, especially having been born and raised in Singapore. I know that a lot of my Asian friends, for example, if you tell your parents you want to go into gaming or theater or film, it's like, hello, please don't. And I did all of that, right, and was able to succeed in that. And so what I did see was the opportunity to create a level playing field and also to allow people to be who they are and be able to create jobs. And within a short span of time, we've been funded by the Sandbox. Thank you. And we also managed to scale a company from 2 to now 30, and we're growing. So this is not a fad. The metaverse is real, and we're right now working with banks, with academic institutions, with F&B, with retail. We're taking them all into the metaverse. So it's an exciting time to be here, and thank you.
Yay!
Amazing, Sue.
Thank you very much. It's hard to follow a mouse, but I'll give it my best shot. I am Sue Rooney. I work for Global Village Publishing. We are a publishing house focused primarily around innovation around the world. And we're all about building communities and connecting people and bringing together people that can embrace the new technology and make a difference in the real world. One of the projects that I'm really proud to be a part of is the Women of the Future initiative. And I'm sitting here with two featured women, and Elizabeth is a very well-respected member of our editorial board. So that is a project we're really happy to be here to celebrate and shine a light on. And I firmly believe in bringing women together and giving women the opportunity to showcase the incredible work that they are doing. And I think that this project does just that. So, yeah. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Incredible. I mean, see, I told you didn't want to miss these ladies. Okay. So obviously, you know, what I love the most about Web3 is the ability to truly collaborate across borders and create, you know, more initiatives that are doing things like what we are just discussing here, and we're going to keep diving into it. So by way of borderless collaboration, we've noticed that there's some diverse viewpoints. And so outside of the box thinking. So with that said, let's just dive into some questions. Ladies, in your own words, obviously we hear a lot, everyone's definition about what the metaverse is, what Web3 is, why should companies invest in it? But if you can just give us a quick snippet on what your thoughts are on Web3 as it stands today. And Sue, why don't you give us your first introduction based on kind of, you've seen a lot of the women in this book. There's 100 women that have been represented, and they're each working on different technology, right? How we define Web3 under an umbrella, right? So they're not just working on the metaverse, they're probably in blockchain or in AI, an XR. So can you tell us about, you know, what that means to you? How would you define Web3 and the metaverse?
Thanks. Well, Web3, I think, really is about celebrating a sense of community. It brings together a lot of people with a common goal, and it allows anybody from anywhere around the world really to participate in this conversation. And I think that's what's really, you know, strikes me as being important. Having been exposed to all of these women in the book, what I can say is the women that really, they're all fantastic and they're all successful in what they do, but the ones that really sort of resonated with me are the ones that realize that at the end of the day, we're still dealing with people. So it's still people-to-people communication. We need to make sure that we recognize that, and you know, however we talk to those people, it's still people behind it. It's not business-to-business communication. It's not a laptop to a laptop or a VR to VR set. It's people-to-people, and I think that's really important. And also being able to address a real-world problem. So using Web3 to address something that's actually significant in the real world. And a lot of the work that we do focuses on organizations that can take this new technology, all the good things that Web3 brings, but make a difference in the real world. So for me, it just represents a great opportunity and a great sort of collaboration of people with a like-minded vision of changing the way we live today through this tech.
Incredible, yes. And we've seen a lot of impact-driven initiatives represented in this book. Dr. Loretta, I'm sure you have your thoughts.
Right? Whenever you need anything answered, just ask a mouse. Or if you need anything done, give it to a busy woman. I mean, that's how you get things done. So I would say, I think for an easy definition would be like, think of Web 1 as the age of information, where, right? I mean, it was developed by government agencies, and really for you to be able to decipher information, you go online, it's very one way, you get information. Web 2 is really the age that we're in now, the age of interaction. We are all platforms. Like I said, back in the day, I was from traditional media, right, publishing, radio, television, which was a walled garden. I mean, if you weren't from a particular agency, if you weren't from a particular national television broadcast center or a radio station, you pretty much don't have access to be able to tell your own story. But I think today, every single person has a media platform. But I think the key distinction to recognize is that, as most of you here will probably know, is that even if you are an influencer and you're the Kardashians and you put, you know, all your life there and you have 2 million followers, the fact fact is you don't own the platform, right? It's like you're a train, but you don't own the train tracks. I mean, that does not make sense. So I think that leads us to Web3, where Web3, think of it as, I like alliteration, so if Web1 is the age of information and Web2 is the age of interaction, which is what we're in right now, then Web3 is the age of interoperability, which is what we're working towards, is the age of immersion, because we're all wanting more and more of ourselves in, including our mouse selves in, and also in the age of identity. And you would take it back to a time when most people, and I don't mean this in a rude way, but most folks who, a lot of my best friends were LGBTQIA. I was a total fag hag. They all know me. They love me. But my point is, there's some populations, women, marginalized communities, who may not get access to traditional funding or access or just opportunity in general. And back in the day, I mean, one of the things that I used to write about was about how MySpace or Facebook, even before Facebook, but technology enabled marginalized communities to get together. And today, I think if you think about what the metaverse is headed towards, it allows people to really have a fuller opportunity to explore who they really are in many ways that for those of us who had an opportunity to choose who we want to be, including showing up as a mouse, that's a privilege. A lot of people have to dumb it down. Women, I know we all have to dumb it down a lot of times. You know what I'm talking about. And oftentimes, if you're not of a certain color, of a certain socio-economic background, of a certain educational status, you're not afforded the same opportunities. But I think today what we do have is, like I said, an ability to level the playing field and be able to show up as you want to be. And I think it's great that our younger generation, I have no children, but I look at my friends who have children, and they have the ability to explore different sense of selves, different identities, right? It's like that Cartesian sense of self, like I am where I'm at. It's no longer I think, therefore I am, right? But it's like I am where I'm at. And I think it's so fun for them to be able to explore opportunities and identities at a really young age. Anyway.
Oh, I love that. And I think,
Gabby,
this is perfect segue, because Gabby likes to recognize herself as a magical unicorn. And so, we're talking about identity and being yourself. So please, what is your defining moment for Web3? What is it? How do you define that?
Well, I want to just say that I really resonate with everything that was said so far. So I definitely think that it's community driven. I definitely think we're moving into an era of ownership and an era of immersion. I think those are really important. For me, Web3 is a paradigm shift, and it's a cultural change that is global and that is intersecting every industry, but also every mind in terms of changing the way that we think about who we are, changing the way that we think about our relationships and entrepreneurship and business and collective. So I see it as a tsunami of transformation, and I see it as an emergence of regeneration. So I think we've only gotten so far with the systems that we've had in place. We've cultivated a very strong individualistic industrial momentum with technology and with enterprise. And I think what happened is that we became a bit lost in terms of our relationships with the planet, our relationships with each other, and our relationship to the work that we're doing. And I think this is a calling to reconnect with each other, reconnect with the work, and create what's called decentralization, which is the foundation of blockchain, which is the foundation of metaverse and all of these emerging technologies. And that decentralization is, to me, synonymous with community. It's synonymous with shared leadership. One of the things that I enjoyed about participating in the Mission Impact training was asking the women for their vision of the future and materializing their version of a future that feels really good to them. And inevitably, when we imagine a future that feels really good, it's one that's more connected, and there's a deeper sense of belonging and inclusion and diversity, and we crave that creativity and we crave that collaboration. And I think this is a coming home in a lot of ways and restoring some of the things that are missing from the way that we operate right now. In
Can I
Web
just
2.
add a little point
Yes.
too? While I wholly agree, but I also think that it's very important to recognize that it's not just about us women being tree huggers, right? There's also sound business sense that the more diversity there is, the more opportunity there is, right? And I also think that what's really important is, to your point, that I think we're now really moving into an era of like stakeholder capitalism instead of shareholder capitalism, right? And it's not just about ensuring that we ensure that all the profits go towards the shareholders, but, beginning to sort of create opportunities, fractionalization, democratization of opportunity to allow people more access to opportunities that were denied. I mean, just a very simple example is, increasingly today we could show up in like sneakers. I mean, it sounds like a very simple thing that most of you think, yeah, men just take it for granted. But I remember growing up and there was a certain sense of how women had to dress. You had to look a certain way, you had to show up a certain way, you have to wear high heels. And today I love the fact that my niece can go out clubbing and she just shows up in her sneakers and you can just show up as you. And I think this actually creates more opportunity as well, because the more diversity there is, the more opportunity there is. And so that really actually leads to more access to all of us. Sorry, go ahead, Elizabeth.
No, this is perfect. This is a conversation. And that's how I like to do the panels. Let's just chat. And so, I was listening to everything you were saying, and something that stood out is when I think about borderless innovators, I don't just think cross-country. I also think about the people that are involved in the technology, the different skill sets, the different industries. And actually, Loretta, you and I have had a good conversation on this, and then you told me, your co-founder is an architect by trade. I told you I was an interior designer by trade, and I ended up somehow in this industry. And so why is that important? Aside from just, we'll have a conversation on inclusivity with women in just a second, but why is it important to have that kind of collaboration when building tools, around this technology?
Yeah, great question. For a variety of reasons, right? If you think about how the world has typically been sort of shaped, it's almost like a pyramid, right? It's like you have like the bankers, the lawyers, and all of this sort of right at the top. They make the most money, and then everyone is like at the bottom of the food chain. But I think the reason why many of us are very excited about the metaverse and what the Web3 brings is that it inverts and subverts the food chain, where creators, artists, innovators, entrepreneurs actually are able to contribute, and ideas have value. And these ideas actually have an ability now to be created, because you one, remove the gatekeepers, and two, you now are able to access a community that functions as your stakeholders. It's not just about having to appeal to a board of usually pale, stale male. Again, I love pale, stale male. If any one of you identify as that, is not personal. I assure you, I'm dressed as a mouse. That it's really important to recognize that we now have these opportunities to create so many more networks in a way that was impossible before. And I think the other thing too is that just having a difference in way of thinking really just emboldens and creates so much more innovation, creativity, energy. I mean, if you think about removing just one species from the ecosystem, we recognize that completely. There was a time, I remember it in was it the year 2000, people were saying, oh no, I think all the bees in the world are going to die, and everyone was just like freaking out. But the fact is, if you just removed one species, it caused a lot of damage to the ecosystem. So imagine that's what we're doing with diversity now. We're trying to replant trees, we're trying to create more diversity in the ecosystem because it's healthier. Diversity in thought is incredibly important, even though it's very difficult. Democracy is incredibly messy, and it requires all of us to think in a variety of ways, but it always emboldens the system and enlivens it in many ways.
I love that. Yeah, I agree 100%. And back to now thinking about kind of that global inclusive economy. How do you build one of those in Web3? That's quite a conversation, right? We've had discussions on this before. So you work with, not just, you're talking about projects in the innovation space in general. What are some comparisons, some differences that you're seeing from, this Web 2 world to this, this buzzing Web 3? I think I'm more enticed to say emerging tech. That's more of my favorite conversation. I feel like we're going to move into like other versions of Web 3 so quickly. But what are you saying? What are some like comparisons that you're noticing, or things that stand out? Maybe some weaknesses among, yeah.
I think what does stand out to me, and what we need to be careful is us that are already in this Web3 space, that we don't create an echo chamber, because it's really easy to sort of keep hearing the same thing and believing that everybody's moving in the same journey that we're sort of journeying on. what I do know is there's a lot of people that are still in that Web 2 space that don't know how to get into Web 3. And they're looking for those use cases. They're looking for people like us who I believe we have a responsibility to take those people along with us. So I think what's really important is we need to recognize that there's a lot of people in Web 2 who want to jump into this space, who want to leverage what emerging tech can give. They just don't know how to do it. And it's important that we make sure that there are cases out there that show them how it's done, that there's an easy process for them to follow, and that education is really at the foundation of what we do to bring everybody on board with us.
Yeah, and I think that's been a reoccurring theme this past few, 2 weeks. We've been having lots of events around Art Basel, especially here in Miami. We're in just such a big, we've embraced, crypto in general, but like also Web3 as a whole in the city. And so we've seen a lot of conversations, and the main theme has always been education, education, education. How do you create mass adoption? Education, education. So Gabby, can you first give us, I would love to hear from you some of your favorite projects that you've seen, because I know that you also have a background in medicine. Can you tell us some of the innovative projects that have caught your attention in the space, use cases?
Yeah, and I just want to echo what you're saying with regards to education. So I'm a professional educator. I've been a university professor for 18 years. So I'm trained in holistic medicine. That's my background. And my segue into Web3, and you're talking about different entry points into Web3, was during the pandemic. I was doing humanitarian work in Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Guatemala, and New Mexico. I was building earth ships, which are sustainable housing. I was working on farms. And I found some projects in Guatemala and Dominican Republic that were built on tokenomics. And they had created coins, and they were using them for fundraising and to build local economy. And they were creating their own ecosystem in their villages. And they taught me, the PhD who came there to do humanitarian work, they taught me cryptocurrency. And I was so impressed and so blown away that I had to do a deep dive, and I had to catch up with them. And that was amazing. And that's what I see also with my students. So I've had university students for my whole career, and they're half my age, and they teach me about the technology, and they're coming in native to these things, and they're way ahead of me. So I think what we have to learn from is the students and the young people. I really think that they're gonna be the strongest leaders in the space, and I also think that they're innovating in the space. So one of the things that's fascinating about Web3 is that the leaders are the artists. And we haven't seen that since the Renaissance 500 years ago. That's the last time that we really had artists on a pedestal like this. For 500 years, it's been scientists, or it's been engineers, or it's been other kinds of industry professionals. And now the artists are the people that we can really look to for leadership in the space and guiding us. And so in addition to playing in emerging technologies, I also play in emerging medicine, and I'm part of the psychedelic revolution of bringing magic mushrooms and ketamine and MDMA and different psychedelic substances to people for post-traumatic stress recovery, for addiction recovery, for all kinds of mental health. And playing in that space, there's actually a ton of NFT projects that are combining the new technology with the emerging medicine so that they can create a different kind of way to raise money and support projects for emerging medicine. So I see it overlapping and intersecting across sectors of education and medicine and technology and industry and art, and I think that's what's really fascinating.
I love that. And you talked about a little bit about kind of that creator economy, and Loretta, you have a lot of stuff to say on this, and so we'll get to that, because our focus has always been, let's say, contribute to earn, and that's what stands out to me in this ecosystem. So can you elaborate on that, on contribute to earn and the creator economy and what that means for this new wave?
Yeah, and I'm kind of watching the clock, and it's so fascinating, watching the clock tick, tick, tick,
Yes,
and I'm just watching it. And to answer that question, let me just give you an example. I remember, when I was speaking in Carnegie Mellon to my students, and these are, incredibly privileged students, right? Obviously, they belong to like top 1% of the population, and they have incredibly great jobs. These are executive education graduate students. And I remember one of them saying, "Hey, isn't we use these like play to earn economies or like things like Axie Infinity? Isn't that exploitative?" And I said, "Well, to you it's exploitative because in our developed first world sort of economy where you make like $100,000 and above easily, to you that's exploitative. But to someone in the Philippines who hasn't had a meal and who's able to stay home and be able to play a mobile game and be able to actually make money from that, be able to put food on the table. For a woman, you're spared becoming a bar hostess or a prostitute. For a man, you're spared being, an addict or to peddle drugs. I mean, this is not exploitative. This is a means to a living, right? Which is also why developing countries are the first to adopt a lot of these technologies. And I actually kind of want to challenge the term. I don't really see it as emerging tech, but really evolving tech, because this technology has always been there and just evolving. But to your point, I think it's also about, so the Axie Infinity example aside, the other is also being able to an earlier point that I made, democratize and fractionalize and enable new modalities of businesses. So for example, in one of the colleges that we're bringing on board, Aventis, what we're trying to do is like tokenize education so that we can reduce the cost of education, because many of us don't recognize, but education has actually gone up by 1,400% in the last 40 years, right? It is ripe for disruption and it's been incredibly expensive. But how we've done education is a similar way, right? Professors talk and students are there. I know some of us are more engaging than others. I get that. But in general, and some give mushrooms, I get that. But in general, it's ripe for disruption, and we have been very exclusionary in how we've done education, because we only say we want the creme de la creme, and the higher and the more premium the education, right? The acceptance rates are lower, right? So what we've effectively done is we've just denied people an access to opportunity by making education more and more expensive. And to that, I always argue we have an educational caste system. So one of the points I'm trying to make is that with this technology, we are able to not just play to learn or play to earn, but we're able to actually use the technology to create like tokenomics, fractionalize education, and fractionalize other things, even like philanthropy and other ways of work and businesses, to make it accessible and truly accessible for the first time in history to as many people as possible. And I'm watching the clock again.
Amen.
So
Hallelujah.
Yes. No, actually, I agree. So what we do at Mission Impact is focused on that. It's like we noticed there are so many women across the world. So we had 50 women, 400 plus applicants, and 50 women, about 21 countries that were represented. And so women in Nigeria, lots of applicants of women from Nigeria, Morocco, Helsinki, Peru. I mean, and there were incredible talent that wasn't getting the opportunity. And so they were lawyers, nurses, different backgrounds, stay-at-home moms in transition. But when you see their just the talent that they brought forward, it was incredible. So it's just bringing that education to everyone. But thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, ladies, for being here today. I appreciate you and your conversations.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for being here. Thank you.